Alright, so I've got this heavy secret. For 3 years, I cheated on my amazing husband with my ex, who was actually violent and abusive. This is the one thing I've vowed to never tell anyone, to take it to my grave. I'm thinking of posting this anonymously on our /relationships subreddit to get some advice. What do you think? But I read through a few similar threads from the archives, and people do not take well to cheaters there. So our /confession will have to do. Sorry for the throwaway account, but it had to be done. So sorry, but I'm not sorry. I guess my husband and I are both in our late 20s, and we've been married for 5 years and together for 6. We're on cloud 9 these days, but it's been quite the roller coaster. Brace yourselves, guys. My hubby used to be the ultimate introvert. Picture this. When we first hooked up, he was the super quiet, uber nerdy dude who could turn on the charm, but wait for it, he'd often get lost in his obsessions. Talk about a curveball. He was nothing like the guys I usually went for. Life has taken a turn for the better, and it's so heartwarming. The most incredible part? He adored me just as I am, and that's a feeling beyond words. But here's the jaw-dropping part, folks. Unbeknownst to me, I had this amazing guy by my side, and all the while, for the first 2 years of our marriage, I was secretly seeing an ex on the side. It wasn't an everyday thing, but whenever he beckoned, I'd ditch everything and rush to meet him. I was obsessed with him, and I wanted him to love me more than anything. My ex is the most hot, cold guy you will meet. He can be so exciting and fun, but he has a dark side like none other. He cheated on me a lot when we were together, and we had a few rough fights, so it wasn't a healthy relationship at all, but it was an addicting one. My ex, believe it or not, couldn't care less that I was happily married to my husband, and he knew he still had a hold on me, even after I had that ill-advised wedding. Shockingly, he continued to pursue me aggressively. He would constantly spew toxic comments about my husband, relishing the role of being the other man, as messed up as that sounds. It's only now that I can see him for the utter scumbag he truly was. To put it bluntly, this crazy affair would rear its ugly head every few months when we crossed paths or hung out. It's a total train wreck, and I can't fathom that I allowed myself to become that person. It's beyond messed up, folks. Thankfully, the affair is a thing of the past now, but I'll forever be haunted by the terrible choices I made. It all came to a head when my husband and I made the decision to start a family, and my ex flat out refused to heed my request to use protection. That was the breaking point, and I finally put an end to it. I was still in the fog with him and wanted him to be happy, but I didn't want to risk anything with my husband, and when he refused, it hit me how little he cared about me, and I just woke up. I realized how messed up everything was, and I've basically not said a word to him in 3 years. Come April, my husband doesn't know anything, and I think it would crush him to hear about the affair. I know it's behind me, and I'm committed to being the best wife I can be going forward. Your ex is not the only scumbag you are, too. You have no respect for your husband. What if your ex had worn a condom? Would the affair have still continued? Now let's hear the community feedback. You're not being fair, and you're being selfish. I can tell by the fact that you were basically subservient to a violent, abusive ex, that you have had some problems with feeling in control of yourself. I don't doubt that happiness was elusive during this phase of your life, and you blindly chased it. You might feel like you've had this major epiphany and are ready to be a completely different wife moving forward. But let me drop a truth bomb on you. Your relationship will hit a plateau and never truly thrive if you don't come clean with your husband. You can't unilaterally decide to be the best wife without involving him. It's not your call to make. You need to be honest with your husband and let him make the decision about the future of your relationship. Maybe he'll be understanding, and you guys will grow together. It will be hard and it won't happen immediately, but it will be much better than living a lie. Or maybe he will break up with you. That should be his choice. And if you're worth your salt, you'll put it in his hands. Another comment. You're probably going to cheat on him again because you clearly have no respect for him as a man. It'd probably be best for him if you told him and left him right now. That said, I'm sure you don't give a F about what's best for him. So if you are going to stay with him, then never tell him. Your relationship will never recover, and nor will his self-esteem. If the woman I loved and was married to for 3 years told me that, then I'd probably off myself. There's a good chance that he would do. Now the second story: cheating ex-wife remarried and had a baby, and it triggered all I went through. My cheating ex-wife and I divorced in 2017. She abandoned our marriage for her affair partner and never looked back. In 2021, after 4 years of no contact, she called me out of the blue and apologized for everything she put me through and said she was in therapy for childhood trauma and that I was the best thing that ever happened to me. After our divorce, she launched her own business and I played a crucial role in getting it off the ground. Fast forward to 2021 and she reaches out to me, sending a screenshot of her business account, proudly displaying nearly $140,000. It was crystal clear that her business was thriving, and I can't deny I felt a pang of envy. She sought my advice on how to handle the money since I had a knack for investing. I told her I'd start by paying half of the divorce fees and lawyer fees. She left me holding the bag for her because I funded the entire divorce just to get out of the unfair situation. By the time we divorced, she was living with her AP. Anyways, to my astonishment, she immediately Venmoed me the money for her half and also an additional $1,500 for taking care of our dog she abandoned as well. Over the course of a few days, she was attempting to further contact me, and I told her I am glad she's getting the help she needed, but she violated everything sacred about our marriage and to stop contacting me. She obeyed my request and I never heard from her again. I figure at that time the relationship with her AP finally ended, which was why I was hearing from her. Despite everything, I happened to spot her at the same church where our relationship first blossomed. She was there with her new husband and their baby. Interestingly, this new husband wasn't the guy from her affair. It's clear that she has managed to get her life on track and appears to have it all together now. While I'm genuinely pleased that she has turned her life around, I can't help but wrestle with the nagging question of why I wasn't enough to make her end her affair before it tore our marriage apart. Why didn't she just return to her matrimonial home, which is what I so desperately wanted at the time? She completely destroyed the essence of who I am, and I have never been the same since. It still hurts to think about what she did to me almost 7 years ago. TLDR. I'm angry. My cheating ex-wife blew up our marriage and didn't change her ways until now. I'm angry that this new husband of hers will perhaps get the better version of her that I never did or never will. Seeing her with a baby, her first baby that is not mine, reopened so many wounds, and knowing she is probably a doting wife to him, but didn't value the marriage we had, angers me as well. Please help. Witnessing her with her new husband and seemingly well-put-together life stirred up 2 emotions that I hadn't felt since the early days of our divorce nearly 7 years ago. But let's tune into the wisdom of the community for a moment. The feedback I've received is not that I wasn't enough, but rather that she was deeply broken. Her actions were a reflection of her own inadequacies, not mine. It took her many years to heal, and the fact that she eventually reached out to me speaks to her journey towards self-recovery. You were enough that she tried to make amends. That's significant. She acknowledged your worth and apologized. Her shortcomings are not a reflection of your worth. Her hindsight attempt at amends would be a more accurate assessment. Another comment, brother. Sorry that you are re-experiencing this painful betrayal. You gotta find a way to get your life in order and move on. You bring up a valid point, and I appreciate your concern. It might indeed be time for me to embark on a fresh chapter and find a new place to rebuild my life. If I haven't already done so, continually dwelling on the past and encountering her could indeed hinder my healing process. Your prayers and well wishes mean a lot, and I hope to find that place of peace in due time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Opie. Her cheating has nothing to do with you. She was broken and you couldn't have done anything unless she worked on herself. Don't think you were not enough. Next story, should I, a 24-year-old guy, forgive my 48-year-old mother for having an affair that ultimately led to my father's death? I brought this up on Reddit a while back, and folks insisted I share it here for your thoughts, so brace yourselves. Flashback to 2019. I was a high school senior, and my sister, just 16 at the time, was a freshman. We all lived together under one roof with our parents, who had been married for a solid 21 years. Our father was this high-powered lawyer in the heart of Manhattan, while our mom ran her own boutique over in Queens. Plus, we had a house right on the border of Queens and Long Island. But here's the kicker. Before I dive into the story, you need to know that my mother, as loving and affectionate as she was, played a huge role in my life. I couldn't stress it enough. I loved my mother more than anything in the world. But here's where things get seriously bizarre. Back in 2019, my father and I started noticing some major red flags in her behavior. She was doing some really weird stuff, folks. She began hanging out with colleagues who were way younger than her, splurging on outrageously expensive designer outfits like Chanel and Christian Dior, and even went the extra mile to get her lips done. On top of that, she was jetting off to Europe on these fancy trips pretty darn frequently. And guess what? It was always without me or my dad, though occasionally she'd take my sister along for the ride. My dad was growing seriously anxious and concerned about the excessive time she was spending away from home. Then, one fateful day, she drops the bomb on my dad, saying she needed to stay late at work and doesn't return home until a whopping 4 a.m. So here's where it gets unbelievably shocking. The very next day, while she's innocently taking her shower, my dad takes a bold move and snags her phone. And what he discovers is utterly jaw-dropping explicit messages with another man, and even videos of them, doing the deed. He freaked out, and they got into a giant, huge fight-screaming match. And all I can remember was my dad saying, "Do you want to be with him or your family?" And she just kept saying, "I don't know." Over and over again. A little while later, my dad came downstairs and told me what was going on and what Mom was up to. But I didn't believe him at first. Then he brought his phone and briefly showed me messages of my mom and affair partners sexting each other and a part of a video I wish I didn't see, and I was broken. I couldn't believe she would betray us like that. My dad was sober from liquor at that point for a little less than 15 years, but he immediately went out and started drinking again and came home drunk and slept on the couch. You won't believe how much my dad fell apart when he discovered those explicit messages and videos. I mean, this guy was a lawyer, always sharp and well-composed, but seeing him in that state was just heartbreaking. Fast forward a couple of days, around 9 p.m., he tells us he's heading to the bar to catch up with some friends and will be back in a few hours. So I call it a night and go to sleep. But here comes the shocker. My mom wakes my sister and me up in the middle of the night, around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., bawling her eyes out, insisting that we rush to the hospital. Unfortunately, my dad was drunk driving home and drove head-on into a guardrail on the highway freeway at 94 miles per hour and was pronounced dead by the time we got there. My whole world collapsed in that moment. I knew I just lost the most important person in my life. And as far as I was concerned, it was all my mom's fault. I immediately felt a strong hatred towards her and just went mute until his wake, which was about 10 days later. So at the wake, my mom introduced me to a man who said his name was John. I immediately knew it was my mom's affair partner because I remember the name on the text my dad showed me, which the name was Johnny, and my mom said it was a good friend of hers. The worst part about this is I watched that prick kneel at my father's coffin and say a prayer over his dead body. After the wake, I let my mother have it. I mean, I called her every name in the book for the next 4 months. I was trying to get her to hate me as much as I hated her, but she never budged. She used to say I love you every single day, and she vowed to stand by my side no matter what. But let me tell you, that just fueled my anger even more. What really pushed me over the edge was that, maybe just 30 days after my dad's funeral, she was out in public, openly dating this guy Johnny. I mean, she didn't even wait for her husband of 20 years to be properly mourned. So you know what I did? I straight up stopped talking to her, cold turkey. Unless it was an insult. Now I played baseball and was lucky enough to get a Division I scholarship for baseball to a school in California. My mother wanted me to stay closer to home, but I said screw that and went to California that August. Once I left and got to school, I cut all contact with her and blocked her number and social media accounts. And we haven't seen each other, or I haven't even heard her voice in almost 5 years. I knew if I needed something financially, I had my dad's parents, so it wasn't that hard cutting contact. She sent letters for the first 18 months, but stopped when she realized I wasn't going to budge. And a year later after I left, she moved Johnny and his daughters into our family home that my father bought with his own money. I guess it's their home now. I used to have a close relationship with my sister, but when Johnny and his daughters moved in, they bonded instantly. His daughters were the same age as my sister and became fast friends. Now get this. My sister and Johnny's oldest daughter are attending the same college and are even in the same sorority at Monmouth University in New Jersey. When I got wind of that, I decided to cut ties with my sister as well. I heard that my mom and Johnny got engaged some months back and I want nothing to do with it. I'm writing this from my grandparents' dad's parents' house in Florida, where I spent every holiday for the past 5 years. And earlier today, I saw a picture my cousin posted on Instagram. It was her, my aunt and uncle, my mom and sister, and Johnny and his daughters. Apparently they're on vacation in the Swiss Alps on a skiing snowboarding trip. And I realized that this was the first time I saw her face in 5 years. And I don't know. I guess it made me miss her a little bit. I have to admit, before all this happened, she was a wonderful mother who I loved dearly. I was an absolute mama's boy before all of this. I've realized that I'm starting to miss her a lot. A part of me wants to forgive her and reconnect with her. But I don't want to betray my father's honor by doing so. I feel guilty to forgive her because of my father. So I'm just lost on what to do. So I ask you, read it. Should I forgive and reconnect with my mother? Should I distance myself and stand up for my father's dignity? What's the right move here? Hey, OP, I'm truly sorry for the terrible situation you've been through. To be honest, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't even spare her a glance. She went on trips with this guy as if he's more essential than her own family and had the audacity to bring him to your dad's funeral. That's messed up. She has shown zero remorse, not even an apology for her role in your dad's death. Total disrespect and taking your sister on those trips. I bet she was in on the whole affair thing, maybe even helped her out. You did the right thing cutting them off. Focus on living your best life and lean on your grandparents. Take good care of them. Plus, you should hit up a lawyer, man. You might have a shot at getting a piece of your dad's inheritance. Good luck. Seriously? Now to the comments a user wrote. I would blast to this Johnny guy is to the whole family. OP replied, I tried to after the funeral, but all my mom's side of the family are on her side, and they all cut contact with me until I reconnect with my mother. When I confronted them, my mother's father uttered these words. Then they'll welcome me with open arms. It's worth mentioning that my father had been an only child. So all I have left on his side are his 2 elderly parents, both in their late 70s. Once they're no longer around, it feels like I'll be navigating this chaotic world all on my own. Another comment hit me hard, saying, you're in love with the idea of your mom, not the person your mother actually is. I'll lay it out here the way I see it in your post. She left you and Dad and frolicked around Europe, denied having an affair, actively chose her app over you and your dad, disrespected his funeral, disrespected your grief, continued to persist with app over you, continued disrespecting her marital home, stopped doing the bare minimum after 8 months for destroying basically the rest of your life. This is from just what you've written. At no point did I realize regret, remorse, grief, shame, repentance. She has moved on. Forgiveness is not for the perpetrator. Forgiveness is for you. If you feel forgiving, her will make you feel better. Forgive her, but keep in mind what you want back doesn't exist. You're not getting a fair mom back. You're essentially getting back the same woman who pulled all those stunts, plus a new partner thrown into the mix. It's a lot to deal with. Take some time to decide if it's really worth the hassle, especially considering all the progress you've made in moving on. And without a doubt, seek out a good therapist. I can assure you, it's the most valuable gift you can give yourself. OP replied, I think I'm just having a moment of weakness and won't reach out, but I really appreciate your advice. Seriously, thank you. I'll let you guys know if OP gives any updates in the future. And that's all for today, folks. Drop your thoughts in the comments on what OP should do. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.